Games, Brains and a Head-Banging Life, GBHBL.com, are very proud to bring you a video interview with Sevé, Schelenz, the director of Peelers, which is a gooey, gory zombie horror. Written by Lisa DeVita and starring Ren Walker, Kaz Darko and Madison J. Lewis. It was available as of March 2017 on video on demand and is now out on DVD and Blu-ray. We here are big fans of the movie. We rated it 7 out of 10 and saw it as a fun, tongue-in-cheek approach to zombies or infected, with some great visual effects, some fantastic acting, and some really, really well done shots, including a very, very fun and interesting ending. So sit back and enjoy the trailer for Peelers.
Evening, Carl. Come by for a closing night?
You know, it's not going to be the same around here without you.
Oh, I'm sure you'll find another place to harass and annoy.
Magnum's here.
What are you doing here?
Just came to dot a few I's, cross a few T's. What do you want?
I think he's just gonna tear this whole place down.
Don't let that green bag destroy all the great memories of this place.
So you guys working over at Pisha Ranch Mine?
Yeah.
Well, how come I haven't seen you here before?
Tonight we're celebrating. It's the cowboy's birthday.
Something toxic, I don't know. Oily and slimy to the touch.
Ugh. So what are you saying? Striking oil suddenly makes you a violent killer?
Looks like you got your hands full. You got it covered?
Closing night. Be any different?
So, I mean, I guess we'll start with a bit about yourself, how you got started in the film business.
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to make movies since I was very young. I remember bugging my parents when I was younger, and I bugged them about getting a VHS camera.
Yeah.
That just shows you my age. And it's a big clunky camera, and they went ahead and they bought me one for Christmas, and I started making movies with my friends and my family. I literally was driving them nuts because I was just making little vignette type movies here and there, and each movie I made, I learned how to make a movie better. And I did that through editing, through compositions, through watching more films and learning the do's and the don'ts. And when it came time to choose a life after high school, I actually avoided my guidance counselor because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And he finally cornered me one day. I literally avoided him for months. And he finally cornered me and said, you got to make a decision. He goes, you know, there is such a thing as working in the film industry. And of course, I'm like, bang, that's what I want to do. And he goes, well, you can go study film. So I went off to York University in Toronto. I was there for 5 years. Studied film, sort of honed my skills, and then from there I moved from Toronto to Vancouver. This is all in Canada, and I've been living in Vancouver ever since. I've been working in the film industry. I do editing on the side, and I make movies, and I've been doing that for the last little while.
I can see the poster behind you. That was your first actual movie, wasn't it? Skew.
That's right. I wonder why it's back there during this Skype interview. Really weird.
Yeah.
Yes, Skew was my first feature. It was in the vein of sort of a found footage subgenre of horror. Made that back in, I think we shot in 2005. Didn't finish it till 2011. I mean, I'm a true indie horror filmmaker. You spend your own money. Your friends put in time to help you out. You put in a lot of time. It takes a lot of hours to get a film done. That one took a while. It was a fun, little, tight film. Tight in the sense that we had a very small cast and crew, very intimate cast and crew, and it was a good time to make that film. And from that, we sold the film, did really well in the festival, sold the film, and then our distributor came to us and said, "What else you got?" And I'm like, "Well, we got a few other films, and comedy is more my background, although I love all genres." And I said, "Well, I'm gonna probably work on a comedy." He's like, "No, you have to do another horror feature." And I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "Oh, well, it did so well, we want you to do another one." So I'm like, "Well, tell me what sells, just so I know. Not that I'm going to necessarily just make something generic that sells." And he says, "Well, if you can have more blood," and I'm like, "Yeah, I can do that," because Skew is a psychological horror, "and you can have more boobs." And I'm like, "Well, I like boobs, but I need to have a reason to have them in there. I'm just going to have them running around the street showing boobs everywhere." So I thought a good place for that to be set would be a strip club. And I approached a friend of mine, Lisa DeVita, who's a screenwriter, and I said, "I have this idea that I want a horror film set in a strip club, but I want the main female protagonist to be the strongest character. I want her to kick ass. I don't want the women to be victims." And her eyes lit up, and she said, "Wow, I've got a story to tell you." And she was living in Vegas a few years before that, and she was at a strip club, and a fight broke out. And she was pulled underneath the table. She actually ended up sort of banging her head, so she got a couple bruises from the whole thing. And she popped her head back up, and all the strippers were taken away because of safety reasons. And she thought, where did all the strippers go? And the next thing she thought was, what if they all came back with like baseball bats and nunchucks and just weapons to kick everybody's ass? And between her idea and what I told her to run with, she came up with the idea for Peelers.
That's brilliant, because well, I've got a lot of questions in regards. I'm glad you brought up the cast and the strong female lead as well. We'll get to a little bit thing, but first things first, baseball fan, right? You're a baseball fan.
Huge baseball fan. I know that it's not huge in England, but yes, I'm a huge baseball fan, and so is a screenwriter.
Yeah, because that comes across obviously in Peelers quite, I wouldn't say obviously, but it's like you start noticing things and thinking, okay, baseball seems to be a little bit of a theme, or at least here, whether it be a hidden object or a certain particular reference point. And you're right, it's not big in England at all. So, but it's not so in your face that it's a concern where you feel like, oh, okay, people in England aren't going to understand it. Ultimately, it's still a zombie/infected bloods and boobs movie. So it's just obviously that, I guess that's that little touch from you and the screenwriter to as a calling card almost.
I guess so. I mean, it is really more of a love.
Okay.
We just both love the sport, and you learn as a screenwriter to write what you know, and then you take a few chances and go on different angles on things. But I think for us, our thing is, at least for me, I like to have twists and things that start, it's sort of bookended, things that you see at the beginning and you plant seeds and they sort of pay off later on. That's sort of more my style. And I think Lisa DeVita, who's the screenwriter, her style is also a lot more comedy in it. I think baseball is more of a passion thing for us. And if we're going to throw something in, we're just not going to just throw it willy-nilly. We're going to put it in and build it into the story. And that's why, as you mentioned, it's sort of sprinkled throughout the film. It's not in your face, but if you pay close enough attention and you understand the baseball game, there's 9 innings in a game. We actually have 9 main characters in the film. The film actually plays out like a 9-inning game. There's references throughout the film about where we are in a game, whether it be the start of the game, whether it be the 7th inning stretch, whether it be at the closing, which is the 9th inning. We kind of structured the film that way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wouldn't work with, I guess, our version of baseball cricket. That's it wouldn't quite come across the same way. So you,
in cricket, could it not be like 7 days in a row for cricket or something?
The longest movie ever. You mentioned you kind of touched upon you like all genres, but but you basically have obviously made at the moment horror. Are you a big horror fan?
It's so funny because horror is that one genre of film that people are so passionate about, and there's so many people who just love it so much. They've watched so many horror movies. There's a certain authority on it, and I'm definitely someone who needs to see more horror films for sure to keep up with all these horror fanatics. Yeah, I'm a horror fan, but I like to be scared. Peelers is an action horror fun film. It's not really necessarily out to scare the crap out of you. Skew is a little more of psychological horror. It really gets sort of under your skin. But I definitely like a horror film that scares the crap out of you. And growing up, I remember the first horror film I ever saw was Halloween, and I couldn't sleep that night, because this could really exist. There could be someone out there that can stalk you and kill you. When you start getting into more like aliens and that kind of stuff, it's not as scary for me because it's not something that could really happen to a certain degree. So, yeah, I'm not a big horror aficionado in the sense that I don't know, every film that exists out there. But I do love a good horror film for sure.
No, that's cool. So going on that, what movies and maybe like directors and people would you say have kind of inspired your style as it is now?
For sure, Tarantino is a big influence. Yeah. When I went to university, Reservoir Dogs had sort of come out at the beginning of university, and Pulp Fiction had come out at the end, and that was a pinnacle for me when I saw that film. And what he did with film and storylines and moving things around was just incredible. There's so many directors I love. I mean, Scorsese is a big influence, and we actually have a tracking shot in Peelers right at the beginning that has this sort of a Scorsese-esque kind of movement to it, and the film Swingers actually did it as well, which is an ode to Scorsese. So, but then you could even do Clint Eastwood, who's very simple in his filmmaking and his compositions, and there's just something beautiful about that. So it's hard to say because I have so many influences, so many loves, and that's why horror is just not the one genre that I love. I love so many of them.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that tracking shot. Me personally, I absolutely love them. You don't obviously get loads and loads of them, so when I saw at the beginning of Peelers, it was just like, oh, brilliant, this is off to a flying start. It's already got my attention because you just don't, particularly in horror, you don't get that much at all.
Yeah, and we tried to mix a few techniques in the film, so it's not all your standard horror film. When you're watching it, you're like, oh, that's interesting. There's low angles, high angles, there's the tracking shot, and we just tried to do different things to really bring the film up a little higher.
Okay, cool. So yeah, on the talking a bit more about Peelers then, right, I have to ask this question because when Peelers first came my way, I looked at it and thought, oh, zombie strippers? Other than the obvious difference once you watch it between the fact it's not necessarily zombies, it's more infected, were you concerned at any stage about similarities that might be called between, say, that and, say, something like Zombie Strippers, a horror movie from, I think, 2007?
Yeah, you know what? I still have, to this day, not seen Zombie Strippers. I assume that by the title of the film, the strippers turn into zombies. I should probably check it out. There definitely has been a lot of comparisons. I mean, the strippers are not the ones that turn into zombies, so maybe that's a bit different. Second off, you mentioned it's more of an infected film, ours. It's funny, there's a lot of people who are authorities on zombies and all the rules of zombies, but I think when you make a film, you create your own world, and as long as all the rules of your world play out in the entire film, then you can follow those rules and you've got yourself a good film. So I guess we fall more into the infected area than really the zombie area. I would say more like the Crazies or 28 Days Later kind of sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't seen Zombie Strippers yet, and it's funny because when we were doing research, I was looking more at films that had strippers in them than films that had zombies in them or stripper zombies or anything like that. I wanted to watch how the strippers stripped and just to see how much time was spent on them, how seductive it was, because we have a film where we've got horror elements and action elements and comedy elements, but I wanted a sexiness to it as well, and I wanted to focus on that.
Yeah, talking about the stripping side of thing, it certainly has a kind of tongue-in-cheek style to it, because we said at the beginning, it isn't nudity for nudity's sake. That's something that I get irritated in horror, where it's like, okay, here's some boobs for the sake of it because we want to get a certain age rating and we want people to think, oh, it's horror, so it's guaranteed. Obviously, Peelers has a fair amount, but it's not just there because you wanted to show off boobs. Obviously, that was your plan, but that tongue-in-cheek style, you know, basically, I think I wrote it in the review as like almost signing off each stripping point with a quite out there idea. What was the plan there, really?
I think a lot of that comes from the demented mind of the screenwriter, Lisa. She wanted to have a film that was a lot more comedy. And we had a discussion before we started writing it, and I said, if you're going to go a lot more comedy, you're going to have to go sort of Shaun of the Dead, and you're going to have a joke almost every 10, 20 seconds. But that's not the kind of film I wanted to make, and in the end we decided let's not pursue that. So her first draft had tons more comedy in it, and I asked her to remove a lot of that and try and focus more on the horror elements and the action fun aspect of it, and sprinkle the comedy in to make it more realistic. And that's, I think, where she had the opportunity, well, let's do it with the strippers. Let's have each of them have their own act where something kind of crazy happens, something maybe over the top. And the great thing about it is the strip club, you know, like typical horror film, will set place in a small town, somewhere sort of isolated. And that's what this is. It's a small town strip club that everybody knows, everybody visits. And so the type of strippers you'd have here wouldn't be your normal ones in a big town where you have the most, you know, gorgeous strippers in the entire world, or the ones that are the perfect dancers or anything like that. I mean, the actresses in the film, obviously they're beautiful, but they have kind of kinky acts, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, but that was definitely part of the idea of the screenplay, is to have that kind of weirdness to it.
Absolutely, yeah, you're right. It's not something you'd want to spoil for anyone, but, you know, it is, talking as a fan who's seen the movie, I thought that was so impressive, so fun but not silly, and it's a selling point of the movie, as you say, because it is on face value holding up, say, the DVD cover and going, okay, oh, it's just another zombie stripping thing, even though it's none of those things. So having that in there, once you get going, it grabs your attention. You think, okay, this is something a little bit different.
Yeah, and not only that, you mentioned the cover of the DVD. Well, there's two posters for the film. There's one that has Blue Jean with her back to us, with the club in the background, that has more of a Walking Dead look. That was something that the distributor came up with the concept. Our original one, which is sort of a severed leg hanging on a pole and the stripper on the ground, that's what we ran with initially. That was sort of from us,
yeah.
And we ran with the festival circuit on that, and I believe that's the version that's on the Blu-ray versus the DVD, which is The Walking Dead. The reason we like that one with the severed leg is it has a certain beautiful, slick appeal to it, and we even have that in the opening sequence of the film, or the opening title sequence. We have sort of a James Bond-esque sort of opening where it's very slow motion shots with a stripper, and again, I don't think it's gratuitous nudity, but it's more beautiful shots, slow motion, nice compositions where all the titles are off to the side. So that's something we were going for with the film, for sure.
Absolutely. So going on, right, so we talked a little bit about the cast, but we're going to talk about one specifically. Right at the start, you mentioned a strong female lead, and one of the most praised things that I've seen from just reading reviews online, what I saw myself, is Ren Walker as Blue Jean.
Yeah.
Obviously, well, the question's going to be, what's it like working with her, and how easy was it to get that performance out?
Well, first off, it was great working with Ren. We had open auditions, and we had a lot of actresses come in to audition for every female character in the film. And so only a few actually auditioned for the role of Blue Jean, which Ren Walker ended up getting. And what we do is, when we were watching everyone audition for the different girls, we thought, oh, is this a potential Blue Jean? Is this a potential Blue Jean? And we couldn't find one. We could not find that character, that actor to play that character that we wanted. And Ren actually showed up because her boyfriend saw an ad for the audition, and he said, yeah, you should really go and check it out. She's like, well, maybe I'll get a small part. And she showed up late in the process, and, baseball pun intended, she hit a home run. I mean, she was fantastic. In her first audition, we had our callbacks, and we had her act off a few of the other actors who were going to play Remy, who is the bouncer in the film. And she was fantastic. So she got the role pretty quickly. She worked her ass off to get in shape. She's in great shape for the film. And her acting background, that is all her. We worked together, but she really took a lot of time to learn her lines. I mean, she's in the film 90% of the time.
Yeah.
There was a lot for her to be prepared for, and we had long shooting hours as well. So she was great to work with, and she was always prepared on set. And she's already been bugging me about the dreaded word sequel, but we'll see if we'll go down that path. We're still in the middle of promotion right now for film right now, the first one. And again, I don't want to say the first one as if there's going to be a second one, because I'm not really a sequel guy, but got a lot of positive reviews so far, so we'll see where it goes.
Funny enough, that was going to be my last question, which was, what's next? Are we going to get Peelers 2? But there we go. I mean, as you say, I guess if you're not a sequel guy, unless there's massive amount of demand, and you suddenly, do you even, without spoiling too much, I guess, would you even at this stage have an idea, rough idea as to what a storyline could be?
Yes, for sure. We have an idea of what the sequel would be. I don't want to say too much about it. We never thought of having a sequel until we hit the festivals and people were loving it, and now that we're out on DVD. We're on DVD and Blu-ray in the US. We're also on VOD in Canada, and we're working our way over your side of the world. Ever so slowly, but so far the reaction has been great, and so yeah, we have some ideas for a sequel. Funny enough, the other girls in the film have come to me and asked for a prequel, just because I'm probably giving away that some people may die in this film, and they had such a great time on set that they want to be in another Peelers film, which they can't really be in the sequel unless they become zombie-esque characters. So they asked for a prequel to introduce what their characters are all about. And I'm like, well, that doesn't really fall into a vein of a horror film. So it was a bit of a joke going on about that. But we thought about the sequel. We're still thinking about it, but we have so many other ideas, and we've got a finished script for something else as well. So we'll see where that goes. Of
course, yeah, cool. So you kind of talked about great reviews. Now, I did a bit of reading up before this because I wanted to sort of see what the review aggregate sites were sort of saying. I obviously got like Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb. Now, I noticed on IMDb, right, Peelers has 4.3 out of 10. But of the 29 written reviews, 20 of them, that's 20 of 29, gave it at least 7 stars or more. What's your thoughts on these scorings that you kind of get on Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb? Do you think it's fair? Because those, as you say, that's a lot of positive reviews. And if you just Google Peelers reviews, you don't find much in the way of negativity. It's always, okay, this is good fun, this is good, this is enjoyable, and this.
Well, you have to take it all with a grain of salt. I mean, if everybody in the world loved it, you would have to start to think there might be something wrong with it. You want to get some reviews where people are critical about it so that you can learn as a filmmaker. I'm far, far away from being the best filmmaker that I can be. Even Scorsese's come out and said that he's still not happy with, where he is today. Like, he wants to be better, and so do I. So what do I think about IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes? I mean, it's all over the map. I think there's more haters in the world that tend to go and rate versus people who are non-haters. If you're a non-hater, you start to think to yourself, oh, I really like that film. You might recommend to a friend, or you're just whatever, and you go on with your life. If you're a hater, you're like, I gotta let everyone know I really hated this film. So I think a lot of those sites really have a lot more of the negativity on them. But having said that, people have written good reviews on both sites. How that equates to the whole percentage, I don't know. I don't know what the whole mathematics behind that is. But I don't look at any necessarily ratings, any negative criticism as a bad thing. As I said, if you want to say I did not like the film, then I'll say, okay, that's fine. But you got to give me because, and you got to explain to me why you didn't like it, and I can sort of say, okay, I see where you're coming from, or maybe I can, change those types of things in the next film, or maybe that's just not your cup of tea, and it works for me, but not you. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand on that whole sort of IMDb Rotten Tomato thing. No,
I 100% agree. There's nothing more infuriating than a negative opinion that doesn't give you a reason why, a justification, or at least an area you can improve in. You talked about Skew and about found footage. The site, our website, and me in particular, I'm a huge critic of that subgenre. I haven't seen Skew. I'll admit, nowadays, because I'm so burnt out by found footage, I'd be a bit I need to be careful about watching found footage horror because I don't want to accidentally judge it just because I'm so burnt out by that side of things. But it's always about, okay, well, it's bad or good because of this reason. And I think you're right. It would be, you need more of that. And you said about the haters are the ones who write your comments and stuff. And I guess that applies to things like YouTube on the trailer and things like that. Is, you know, for every person that says, oh, that looks cool and so on, there's 10 people who will go, oh, that looks rubbish. It looks like this because it's easier to write.
Sure it is. And it's interesting that with YouTube, for example, you mentioned, it seems like everybody has a microphone. Everybody's able to give their opinion. Do they deserve that microphone? Probably not a lot of them, but that's just the way the world goes. I find it really fascinating that there are YouTube channels where people have trailer reactions, literally shots of you watching someone watching your trailer, and you're just watching the side of the head watching something, or you're just watching the front of their face sort of watching a trailer, and they go, oh, and then they turn around and say, well, yeah, that looks crappy. Do people actually watch those kind of
really popular
things? Yeah, I don't really understand that. I mean, if that's the thing the kids are doing these days, then that's cool. But yeah, I'd rather be a little more creative and create something from scratch and make it my own thing. But as I said, all these reviews, positive and negative, you know, there's a message in every single one of them. And as a filmmaker, you want to take something positive out of every single opinion on the film and go from there. It's funny you mentioned the found footage thing. When we made Skew, at the time that we'd shot in 2005, there weren't really a lot of found footage films out. I mean, you had your classic Blair Witch, you had your Cannibal Holocaust, and a few others sort of sprinkled in there. But in the 5 years it took to make it, from 2005 to 2011, Romero's is it Diary of the Dead? Came, Cloverfield came out. There was a few sort of found footage films that came out, and then there was a backlash to that. Because a lot of them came out right after that, and that's when ours came out, even though we had shot it back in 2005. And we rode the backlash. Distributors were not interested in our film. As a matter of fact, a quick story, with Skew, my sales agent brought it down to a convention called the AFM, American Film Market. It's the biggest convention to sell films. And was it Cloverfield? No, it was Paranormal Activity, had just opened the week before the convention, and obviously it blew off the box office doors. And my sales agent said, oh my God, we have a slam dunk here. You've got a found footage film. Paranormal Activity just opened. Everyone loved it. You know, made tons of money. We'll totally sell your film. He goes down to AFM, and by the time the distributors came to his booth, and he represented a lot of films, he said, oh, and they're like, if you have any found footage films, we don't want to hear about it. And he's like, oh, why? Because everybody and their grandmother at all the other booths had pitched them found footage films, and they locked them all down. By the time they come to ours, they didn't want it, even though it was a finished film. So we rode out the wave of the festivals, and all those found footage films that got made, which may necessarily been very good, sort of big backlash to it. And then about a year went by where we were hitting festivals, getting sort of popular. And by the time that year ended, that's when all of a sudden the distributor said, oh, so you have a found footage film, let's talk about it, because ours was done and had a little more quality to it. And then distributors picked it up, and it did fairly well in distribution.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because you said 2005, and Paranormal Activity came out in 2007. So obviously that was, although we had Blair Witch in 99, 2007 is how I see it, is the boom, the starting point of the found footage saturation. That's where we started, that's where everyone went crazy, and then where we ended up. So you had 2005, 2011. So you mentioned obviously the difficulties of getting it picked up. How then difficult was it to get peelers noticed? Because obviously, again, independent movie. And in addition to that, so what do fans, do you think, what do fans need to do more to help an independent movie like Peelers?
Well, I think, as I mentioned before with my sales agent who said, no, you have to do another horror with Peelers, and asking him what sells, we just try to incorporate that a bit more in our film. Also at the time, there really weren't a lot of stripper horror films around in, oh geez, when was this? 2012 is when we wrote it, 2013 is when we filmed it. So there were definitely scenes in horror films that there were strip clubs in, but there was not a lot of films where they're permanently set in strip clubs. So of the ones that I was trying to research, I heard they didn't do very well. I thought, well, let's not just do that cliche, boobs, blood, and bimbos in the club. Let's have, again, the strong female protagonist. So that was kind of the big twist that we wanted to have, where the main girls kick ass. So that's why we did that film, is we thought, okay, well, we'll have interest. We've got to do something that we want to do. We want to have fun with it, but we got to be able to sell it. We have to be realistic about the whole thing. So that was why we created that film. In terms of just fans or any sort of people out there that are supporters of horror and getting out and supporting the film, just talking about it on social media, obviously, purchasing the VOD to see it, or the DVD or the Blu-ray, is a big thing. And I have to tell you, it's very hard to sell a film, whether it be in a theater or whether it's a DVD or not, because that's your hard-earned cash to see a film. And most people go, I'm going to go to the Cineplex. Am I going to see Avengers? Am I going to see Peelers? I mean, they're gonna pick Avengers first. We get it. We're a small independent film who doesn't have the type of advertising budget that Avengers has, or the star power in it. But what we did with the Blu-ray and DVD is we just packed it full of extras. We have 2 commentaries on the Blu-ray. We have behind the scenes. We have gag reel. We have deleted scenes. We have a digital comic. We have so much stuff in it that we're hoping that, hey, if I really dig this film and I want to support the filmmaker, what else is going to give me beyond the film? And that's kind of what the concept of the Blu-ray was.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I think, as you said, it's really hard to sell a movie, however it be now, particularly in our country as well. Call it whatever, laziness or whatever, but everyone's happy enough to go online and watch it on a movie streaming site illegally or whatever, things like that. So, but we always thought, me and the rest of the guys on the site, that the more we started to notice packages, as you were, whether it be a packed out Blu-ray with extras and stuff like that, the collectors and people, particularly in the genres of, like, say, horror, or in another area of the site we deal with metal, where you'd get a CD released and now it's jam-packed with extra songs or a badge or this and that, and people want to pick that stuff up because it appeals to the collector. And I do think that's, on the horror side as well, that's what people want. They want to be able to hold, like I say, a Blu-ray and go, okay, it's worth it because it's got this, this and this. I think you guys would put out a Blu-ray with a deleted scene and that was it, and maybe one commentary and so on. It may not have had I guess taken off as well. But on that point, you say all that's available in Canada right now, right? And you mentioned you're coming over here in the future. Time scale, do you reckon? Because
I totally get what you're saying. Well, let me just back up for a second. You were talking about the Blu-rays being packed and getting more for your money and giving more to the fans, and that's something that with Skew we had a hard time with, because we don't have any control of what the distributor decides to put on the Blu-ray or DVD. So I learned quite a bit, again, as a filmmaker making Skew, that when I went to Peelers, I said, okay, I'm really going to concentrate and give the distributor so much content that I hope that they put it on. In the end, if they decide they don't want to put anything on, then that's their choice, and we don't have a choice on that. The same as with the poster, where they did the sort of the Walking Dead-esque poster. That was not our concept. That was theirs, and we only have so much say on it. So but you roll with it, and because we gave them so much content, in the end, they loved it. They knew that would actually make an extra sale for them. So that was one of the things that we tried to do. The other thing is for the U.S., which was our first distribution, after festivals, we had the VOD in U.S., and then we had our Blu-ray and DVD. In Canada, we actually had a limited theatrical, and then now we're on VOD, and they're all baby steps. That's kind of how it goes. You have your theatrical first, your VOD, your DVD. It's nothing new on how that works. When it comes to, for us, foreign sales, which is the rest of the world, we have a separate sales agent. Their name is Devilworks. They're fantastic, and they go to the markets and try and sell it, but they have holdback, so they can't actually sell it until after it premieres in the U.S. It's kind of how it goes. So I believe they made some sales to different countries in Europe, but getting updates sometimes is a bit hard, so I'm waiting to hear back from them when that's going to happen. And just one last thing I wanted to shed light on. You mentioned people going online and illegally watching films, and you can't stop pirating. It's just kind of where it's at. It's just, you just hope the fans will support you, because if everyone pirates, the ones that actually suffer the most are the indie filmmakers. Because, I mean, you could say, oh, Hollywood's making all this money, they don't need any more money, but it's still a job that they're doing, and they're still, it's a business, they're trying to make money. Yeah, people will go to the theater and see that, but with indie filmmakers, not a lot of people are going to the theaters, so we're just losing money right off the top. I mean, we need people to purchase it properly on VOD or buy the Blu-ray and the DVD. So what we did as a little trick is we actually released a couple of different versions that were incorrect of the film. We messed with the film, and we actually send them out to the illegal sites and let them put them on. So anybody that's actually watching the film through those sites, they're probably not watching the right film. So if they're thinking about, well, did I see the right film or not, you can only see it on the proper VOD sites or through Blu-ray and DVD. So it was a bit of a strategy we had as well.
I've never heard of that being done before. See, that's a really, really great idea, because, say, if you're watching it that way, you won't have seen the actual film to a certain degree.
That's right.
Brilliant. Okay, so I've got one or two more questions, just back to about peelers. Earlier on, we touched upon gore. Now, one of the things I noticed about the movie is it is quite gory. Visually, it's a visual treat, but to me, it's always been a real difficult balance of getting it between realism and slapstick. And Peelers manages that. It's a really nice balance between where it looks visceral, gross to a degree and something like that, but it's not like Hostel or a movie like that, torture porn style horror. How easy is it to get that balance right?
It's hard. It's actually really hard. I mean, it all starts in the screenwriting, and when you're writing, you're obviously visualizing things. And I come from an editing background, and when I direct, I actually direct from an editing point of view. I think about how the shots are going to be composed, and if I'm going to be able to cut two shots together. When it comes to the gore or the special effects, we wanted to have much more practical effects than visual effects. I mean, there are visual effects in the film. There's quite a few, actually. There's a lot of visual effects that people won't even know about because they're a lot more cleaning up shots or enhancing shots or adding things. And there's the obvious shots where you're adding more effects to it because you couldn't do it practically on set. And some can look good and some can look bad. And I know in our film that's the case. Some don't look good as compared to others, but that's indie filmmaking for you. We don't have the budget where we can get the best visual artists in the world, or we don't have the time to do that. But for the special effects, we had a guy by the name of Keir Vickert, and we spent a lot of time working with Keir, and we had a special effects house, which is Masters Effects, and they had done Slither, and they had done some Twilight movies and stuff like that. So they were a bigger house, and they provided some of the rigs. And the rigs are the ones where they're literally the apparatuses they use. Like in particular, there's a shot in the film where a girl gets impaled with something through her back. And we had to create an apparatus for that kind of thing, and that came from Master Effects. And then Keir would take that and he would add sort of more blood or black ooze, if you want to say, which is in this film, to it. So trying to get the balance of effects that look realistic, maybe not so over the top, maybe some scenes yes over the top. It is a hard balance. There is a scene where, a couple scenes where people vomit, and we decided let's just go over the top on that stuff, and they vomit some black stuff that just goes everywhere. So again, I think it's as you're shooting the film, what do you want to go over the top and what you don't want to go over the top, and then you sort of maybe fix that up in editing and show less or show more. So it is a hard balance for sure. Yeah, I mean, the vomit scenes you're talking about, they didn't even register as over the top for me, at least, because of the situation and the infection, as it were. It worked. It worked perfectly fine, you know. Okay, there are plenty of people that go, oh, vomit's gross and all that kind of thing, but you are watching a horror movie. It's potentially really hard. That's true.
And if you get sick, there's a high chance you're going to vomit, so it just so happens to be black stuff. Yes, and a lot of it. Yes. So, okay, right, last question. I guess, without going into spoilers, what's your own personal favourite moment or scene in the movie? That you're like, okay, I really enjoyed shooting it, I really enjoyed directing it, I enjoyed how it came across on the screen? Oh my God, what a loaded question. There are so many scenes that I had such a good time with.
I would say we had mentioned the opening tracking shot and trying to sort of reveal the rooms and each of the characters and give you sort of placement in the film. That was definitely a big one because you've got a lot of lighting and a lot of crew in it, and you've got to be able to shoot this tracking shot without getting anybody who's not supposed to be in the shot, in the shot. So that was a fun shot to do. A lot of the special effects were definitely huge fun because I got to sort of sit back, and even though I talked with the special effects supervisor how we're going to do the shots, you don't really know till you're on set how it's really going to work, and if he has something that's going to happen and all of a sudden it just goes wrong, then you're kind of like, that's not good, we need a backup to this. So you spend a lot of time crossing your fingers that let's hope this trick works. And the pukes for sure were some of the fun times, and as soon as they happened we had to cut and had to take a good 15-minute break to clean everything up. And there are a few other shots. Again, I think it's really a lot of the special effects stuff was a lot of fun. I mean, I'm more of a director who likes to work with the actors intimately and try and get the performances as best I can. But when you're in a limited amount of shooting days and you're shooting indie film, you have to worry about composition and actors and getting things done in time so that if you're outside, for example, and the daylight's coming and you're supposed to be shooting night shots, I mean, it's go, 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 get stuff done. So although I love to work with the actors, I think the special effects stuff is always going to be the funnest stuff to shoot.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. Well, I mean, again, avoiding spoilers, I would say the ending. It was very risky. It was very cool. It was very interesting. That's a particular standout point. I think for a lot of people as well when I read online, not just myself, that because it was not out there, I guess it fitted, but it was like, oh, okay, that's how you're gonna end your movie.
Yeah, the ending, and I'm pretty sure because there's after the ending of the film, there's two sort of bonus scenes in the credits. But I know the ending you're referring to, and we definitely have crossed the line for some people. I remember when Lisa was writing it, and we spoke about that scene and whether we were going to keep it in or not. We shot the scene. We thought about whether we were going to keep it in or not. And I even remember sitting with my colorist, and the colorist is this person who takes, when the film's finished and edited, he'll take it and he'll clean it up and make sure all the colors are nice. I was talking to him, and he just turned to me and he says, oh man, this is the scene that people are going to be talking about when this film ends. And I'm like, really? You really think that's the one that's over the top? Because there's a few other ones that are like, oh no, this is the one. So yeah, we definitely cross a line for some people. I've heard some comments where they said, they had a great time in the film, and then when they hit to that point, they're like, nah, didn't like the film at that point. Whereas others like, oh my god, I couldn't believe you went there. So looking forward to hearing more reactions to that scene for sure.
Loved it. Thought it was great.
Awesome.
Right, so before we stop this, just remind everyone again, how can you get hold of Peelers right now?
Well, again, we talked about in the UK, it's not quite there yet. It's coming. Patience. I'm not sure on the exact date yet, but it's coming. So if you're in the US, it's available now on VOD, DVD, Blu-ray. Pick up a DVD or Blu-ray. It has so many extras. You will fall in love with the film. There's probably just as much extras as there is film, if not more, if you include the two commentary tracks we have in there. In the Canada right now, we're doing a limited theatrical, and it's on VOD as well, and we'll be having DVD and Blu-ray hopefully soon. And as mentioned, the rest of the world is coming. Just stay tuned to we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have our website. Everything's pretty much under peelersthefilm.com in some way. So just type that in, see how it's going with the film. And worst case scenario, email me. I'll give you some info. I love hearing from our fans, and I have no problem chatting it up and letting you know what's going on with the film.
I mean, that's amazing. I think a lot of the time people think, oh, well, you're a director. You're far too busy to listen to just some Joe Schmo sitting on his computer. But absolutely, that's fantastic to hear. Brilliant. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. Let us know, and we will push the movie out once it's coming to the UK, and try and drum up as much interest as we can in it.
Yeah, for sure. As soon as it's up in the UK, Carl, you're the first guy to know, and I appreciate you having me on your podcast, if you want to call it. You're the first one, is it not? The first podcast, maybe?
No, we've been doing podcasts for a while, but we're going to do this as a YouTube thing for once.
YouTube. Sorry, yeah. First YouTube, of course. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you having me here, and good luck with the rest of your interviews.
Brilliant. Thanks.